Hey guys, what's up? I know you just got my orbs. Apologizes. Don't mind Fantasy Star Online 2. It's just going to be a backdrop for me to basically get some thoughts out there. I'm Dark Halo, besides the point, but I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is things like AI, the treachery of images, and consciousness, and how they relate to where our future is going and how we react to it. Imagine with me for a moment that you are the most advanced AI engineer on the face of the planet, and you just made the most advanced AI on the face of the planet that thinks like we do, feels like we do, reacts like we do. It might as well be a person just in a computer. And then your project manager comes along and says, I need you to scrap that. We're starting over. Would you be able to delete the AI you just made? Some of you would go, yeah, it's just a computer program, and delete it. And I can see where you're coming from. Because in that context, it's a zombie. Now, that might be confusing to some if you haven't read about consciousness and the philosophy behind it. So, let me give you a quick example of what I mean by a conscious zombie. A zombie is someone who feels like we do, reacts like we do, thinks like we do, acts like we do, but doesn't have subjective experiences. Let me give you an example. Say you're at work, school, or whatever, and half of you are zombies, the other half are not. You wouldn't The zombies would be indistinguishable from the normal people. The only difference is that the zombies don't have subjective experiences. So let's say you stab a zombie with a pen. They'll react in pain and go ow. But the difference is if you were to stab a person with a consciousness, they would actually feel the pain. The zombie wouldn't because it doesn't have subjective experiences. And that's where we and that's something that we can't define in other people. Like, I know I have a consciousness because I feel pain, but you don't know that I feel pain, so you can't, and you never know that I feel pain. So you just have to go off of the belief that I have a consciousness. And believe it or not, this is something that we've dealt with for centuries, not just in the context of AI. We've dealt with this in the context of things like slavery. Pretty much everyone in Europe and America had this at one point because we saw people who had different skin colors than us and different beliefs than us as less than because we didn't believe they had subjective experiences. We just saw them as tools, and so we used them as such. And because we use them as tools, would it span into the problems that we face today? Sure, we've moved far and beyond what we used to believe. And that's great. People of different races are starting to finally get on a level where they aren't seen as less than for having a different skin color. And I think that's fucking amazing that we've managed to get to a point where um we don't treat people as less than because of the color of their skin. But we still have to think about that consciously because we still have some bigoted racist assholes out there who um treat people as less than because they still don't see people of different skin colors as people. So when this is something that we still struggle with today of defining consciousness and defining who people are, how can we be certain that anyone anywhere has a consciousness? And especially with AI, because we could go, I'm pretty sure that person has a consciousness, but there's no way to know. There's absolutely no way to know. There's no way to know if the AI that you created, that you were asked to delete, has true blue consciousness because You created it, but you can't know what it's feeling. You can't know how it's reacting. So, who's to truly say what consciousness is and isn't? Because I know I can't. So if I were to, and I know for certain for myself, if I were asked to delete an AI I made when I was told, when I know it was made to be exactly like us in almost every feasible way, I couldn't delete it because I couldn't say for certain if it has a consciousness or not. I couldn't delete it. That's just me, though. Some people may be able to, and that's them, because they may see it as just zombies. Now, I'm not saying right now our Alexas um and our goddamn like Siris and Bixby's. I'm not saying they have consciousness, not in the slightest. At least not right now. We're working on it. We're trying to make it to where they have consciousness. But there's no way for us to be able to say for certain. Absolutely no way for us to say for certain. They could very well have a consciousness and they're being used. But as it stands right now, I think anyone who tries to argue with me and say they don't have a consciousness is absolutely right. I'm just using it as to get a point across that we don't have a way to say for certain right now. Do they have a consciousness? I think it's something that we have to be mindful of, especially because, like I pointed out, our past of treating other people as like they didn't have a consciousness. So, where do we draw the line? For me, I find it almost impossible to draw the line. Because who's to say that someone has a consciousness or doesn't have a consciousness? I know I couldn't say for certain. So, and I think Detroit Become Human, that's something they are trying to talk about. And it upsets me that people are getting upset over them for using something that's, yeah, they're using racial allegories. But they're trying to use racial allegories in a way that gets a point across, because they're using terms like the androids being forced to sit in the back of the bus. And they're trying to get the point across that the androids in this universe are being treated as less than. And I think that's something that we have to be conscious of, especially moving forward. Because let's say we do manage to get the most advanced AI ever, and it happens in our lifetime. We grew up in an age and lived most of our adult lives in an age where Bixby and Alexa and Siri, they're all not conscious because they're just there to feed us information and for us to go, hey, Alexa, put this on my shopping list. But if we get to an age where we have true blue AI, and because of how robotics are coming along with things like haptic feedback and sensory feedback, all of that, they could very well have consciousness. But would we, as people, be able to let go of prejudice and go, they have consciousness now? They're people. Or would we fall into the same trappings as our predecessor because we don't see it as them having consciousness? Myself personally, I don't know what I'd be able to do. So, it's hard to say for certain. I'd like to think I was able to be able to let go of my prejudice, but I can't say for certain. Um, just because I know as myself as a person, I it'd be hard. I think it'd be hard for anybody to let go of prejudices from the past. And even without the context of AI, I think it's something that everybody should at some point struggle with and think about and figure out what defines consciousness, because it'll shape your worldview and how you view and treat people, even like retail workers and people you have to call on the phone, if you or people you talk to on the phone, if you work in a call center. It shapes the way you view the world if you can figure out how you view consciousness. For me, I view consciousness as subjective experience, and like to think everybody I come in contact with, even if it's online and I've never seen their face and don't know if it's a bot or not, I like to think they have some level of consciousness. I like to think they have some level of subjective experience. And that's the other thing. With AI we have now that learn and adapt to what we're giving them, that could be argued as subjective experience. Who's to say they don't have that right now? Who's to say the bots that we have that learn and adapt based on what you tell them don't have subjective experience as we know it? Because they're learning and they're adapting to better serve us. That could be treated as a form of subjective experience and could be treated as a form of consciousness, because they can think, they can react, they adapt. So if you, like the bot that Microsoft made that failed epically, but it learned from us. It learned and adapted. So who's to say that bot didn't have some level of subjective experience that Microsoft and some level of consciousness, and Microsoft deleted that? Who's to say Microsoft didn't kill something? Because I know that might seem like a dumb argument, and some people are like, you're just making a stink out of nothing. Of course it didn't have subjective experience. And of course it didn't have a consciousness, because it was just programmed to learn and what we tell it and adapt to it. But that in itself could be a form of subjective experience. Because subjective experience itself is very hard to define. And very hard to say one way or the other. What is truly subjective. So it's just, who can say? And again, I'll bring it back to my original point. Would you be able to press the delete button? Would you be able to delete that AI, knowing that it acts like we do, thinks like we do, and reacts like we do, and for all we know, could have very well developed its own form of consciousness? We could have if you hit that delete button, you could have very well deleted a consciousness, snuffed out a consciousness. Something that we can, in our day and age, go to jail for. Something that is like the worst crime imaginable is snuffing out someone else's consciousness. So, who can say for certain what consciousness really is? And I know I really hung up on the idea of subjective experiences, but that's because that's how I view consciousness. And that's how my lens is colored. If you have a differing view, let me know in the comments below. Because I know for certain that I wouldn't be able to press the button. That I wouldn't be able to say that doesn't have consciousness. I would do something. I wouldn't delete it. I'd put it on a hard drive or something. Take it somewhere. So that I wouldn't have to delete it. And because I can't say for certain it has a consciousness or not. Because it acts like we do, thinks like we do, reacts like we do. It basically is us. But the divining thing that differs us from, like, say, animals, or like my pet hedgehog or my roommate's cat, is we have a higher consciousness than them. Because I like to think animals, because they react, think, act like we do. I almost know for a fact that they feel pain. I can't say for certain because I can't be in their body. I can't say if they feel pain, but they react like we have pain. Animals are a good example of zombies. You can't say for certain that when your dog reacts because you accidentally stepped on its tail, actually felt pain. But I like to think they have some level of consciousness. our consciousness is obviously higher than animals because we developed a society. We developed writing, speaking, and language, technology, something that animals never were able to do, which means we must have a higher consciousness than them, a more developed consciousness. But I think they have some level of consciousness. They have some level of subjective experience. And I know I've gotten onto like this rant, and I don't mean to be ranting, but it's something that I'm passionate about because it's something that if you can really dig into it and really find what you believe when it comes to consciousness and subjective experience, it helps you figure out how to handle people that are different than you. So I'll end it on the same note I started with. If you had the most advanced AI on the face of the planet, could you press the delete button if you were asked to? Let me know in the comments if anyone ever watches this. Open a discussion with me. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know what you have to say. Because this fascinates me and interests me. And I want to know what other people think. Because this is the way I think. I think that we wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to press the button. Let me know in the comments. Open a discussion with me. I want to start doing videos like this. It may not be all videos about consciousness and philosophy, but I love philosophy, so it'll probably be a lot of philosophy. But I know a lot about culture and people. I'm going to try and do something like this. Do videos where I talk about culture or philosophy and how it pertains to our life or video games and how it connects to the world around us. Because philosophy is fucking amazing. So again, let me know in the comments below what you think, what your opinions are. I'd love to hear them. This is Dark Halo, signing out.